Are you ready to uncover the real stories behind successful entrepreneurs? The Success Tax Podcast explores the trials and tribulations of entrepreneurship with eye-opening insights from the entrepreneurs themselves. Join Eric Green and Tony Carter as they dive deep into the highs, lows, and hidden costs of building a thriving business. Get ready to revitalize your energy and unlock tremendous wins on your entrepreneurial journey.
Everyone, thanks for joining us again on the Success Tax Podcast. I'm Eric Green. I'm joined by Tony Carter, and we are continuing to break down the game plan. So Dr. Rick Wells is back with us again, and this week we're going to talk about E, which is expressing your best self, and how you show up and how you do that. And I've actually been wrestling with this, so. I think with no further ado, let's hear from the expert, Dr. Wells. Working through this, right? Expressing your best self. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's intentional, and it's intentionally engaging your best self. And it's something that it needs to be uncovered rather than discovered, because you're both very successful in your fields. Families, income, your mindset towards service. So what I'm saying is the ability to communicate how you overcame and how you continued your climb. In order to contribute more, it should be communicable. So work. You've succeeded. You've done things that you are proud of. How'd you do it? That reflective activity and being able to express to your loved ones, to your community, to a wider audience, how you did such a thing, and accompany the narrative with the frame is what I'm talking about. As an educator, that model of showing and telling. It's the telling part.
We mentioned last time, I think I brought up, I've watched these people who've been interviewed who are billionaires who will tell you, I really just set out to fix something. And it's amazing when you can help a lot of people, how a lot of people will pay for it. So here, it's funny, there's an old, I think it was a Dilbert comic where Dogbert says, the point is, beware the advice of the super successful. They don't want company. But I think it's actually the opposite, because people who are very successful, and maybe we'll leave the athletes and the musicians and stuff out of it. But in business, the people that are super successful, because they set out to change something, are usually, I think, pretty open about what they did that worked, what they did that didn't work. There's a really interesting book called The Third Door. And it was written by a young guy, Alex Benayan, who went to pre-med and realized he didn't want to be pre-med. And he's reading books on all these famous people, but none of the books talked about, at the time, how they did this. Like, you'd hear about Steven Spielberg walked onto a lot and became like a director. But how? You can't just walk on. Like in other words, no one ever talks about, they get this kind of generic. So he set out to write that book, and he went and he interviewed all these people who eventually would sit down and be interviewed. And the reason he called it The Third Door is he said there's the front door where the line's down the block and you're hoping you're on the list and they'll let you in. There's the back door where the VIPs go through the kitchen and they get ushered to their table. There's always another way in. A window, like he said, a window, a side door, climbing in through the basement, whatever. And so many of these people would not be denied. They're not going to sit in the front row. They can't go in the back door. And they found another way to get to where they needed to be. So the point is this, is that when you are building and you are successful, I find that most people do want to share that and help, reach back and help pull somebody else up.
But as showing up as your best self, it's easy to say, right? But for a new entrepreneur or anyone who's in it, like, what's that internal process? Like, what is that odyssey? What is that? Is it, should you journal at some point? Should you seek conversation or mentorship through someone that can kind of point out some areas of growth for you? What does that look like?
I think it's all of those things that, we talked about how you need, reflect and communicate. I think what Eric was alluding to is be solutions oriented. Most people are conflict oriented. They're focusing on the problem rather than the solution. And it's different. What are we going to do? Not what the problem is. And just being principled. For me, when you find yourself in the dark wood, the best advice that I heard was to read, right? And gain that perspective and journal and reflect. So I heard you find this fundamental idea. I was reading in a library in San Diego and I was trying to find out what to do next. And I came across this series of books on the Western tradition, reading the greats. And it was find that fundamental idea that just moves you. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And, I chose education. And once you decide to study that idea and move forward, you read, reflect, and you resolve. You resolve to do something. That's the beginning of the journey. So expressing your best self, but once you start, it's really based on the shortcut to it. And I said, just don't follow shortcuts, but the shortcut to it is to reflect on your life and see choose a success. And I would say, you take it further. I would say, choose a success in work, health, your family, your spirituality, and your wealth. Choose a success and examine what it is that allowed you to be successful. That is you being your best self. Now, deliberately and intentionally design a life where you're doing more of that rather than less.
I have a lot of thoughts. Part of this is, I think, also being happy is such a bad word to use for this, but being good with where you are. It's I think we've spoken about this before. So many folks decide I'll be happy when I have this, or, and so, at some point, look at what are you good at, what your success is. Be thankful for that. Be grateful for that. You can keep working on all those. You don't necessarily stop, but I think the issue is you also don't want to hold back that you're not going to be happy. You're going to be sour until you get something, because I think you're going to find that once you get there, you really missed out on a lot. There's something to, and it's very hard when you're in the middle of it. I have a difficult time enjoying the trip, the adventure, the journey itself. Yeah. Because I tend to be very kind of, it's just me. My wife says this to me like Yoda. She's like, don't lose sight of where you are and who you are and what you're doing, and be grateful for that, because otherwise you're going to turn around one day and it's gone, right? And all that time you didn't spend with friends or family because you were so focused on whatever, and it's hard to do when you're in it. But it gets back to this, is that I found I had to really sort of find gratitude to show up and be, I want to say pleasant, but be myself, because I was, time spent with the family on the weekends was a waste of time. I had to work on my business. Yeah. I had to move the ball forward. And I'm better about it now. I wouldn't say I'm perfect. I'm sure my wife would tell you I'm far from perfect, but she has said you are definitely better. You're at least more present
Yeah,
than I used to be.
That's
intentional.
The goal is not to be perfect.
Right.
The goal is to be reverent. So that outlook is helpful. And as humans, we can handle the paradox of being grateful and moving forward. It's don't get caught up in an either or attitude. It's both and.
Yep.
And you can handle it, right? It's simple, but both and is not easy. It's not easy to do, but no one wants easy answers.
Right.
We talked about that before. That's the shortcut. You're having a longevity mindset. This is what I'm committing to. I'm doing the damn thing. And this is me slogging up the mountain, bringing my best self with my mentors, with my support.
And I like the way you framed it before, that it's reflective. And I think that reflective process is ongoing. I would only offer to them, just a thought I have, is that while that's important to do that, and we do it, right? Am I being my best self? Am I meeting my objectives towards my larger goals? But sometimes things happen on that. It's a process. So things happen that may not necessarily be you. You're not really the issue in the process, right? It's just a matter of, this is something that came up along the way. We've experienced that here.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's part of our process. We're not to be discouraged by that. We are to be reflective, but then keep pressing forward.
It's about worthwhile. And Eric mentioned he doesn't like the word happiness. And I think it's because it's misinterpreted. It's like replace happiness with flourishing, life, liberty, and the pursuit of a flourishing life. So the first responsibility that you have is to outline what it is a good life for you. And what I meant by choosing a success in all of those areas of life, the coaching wheel, meaning your work, your family, your health, your spirituality, and your wealth, is you want a complete, right? It's not about making all the money and having an unloving relationship with your children. That zeroes you out.
Right.
So putting that and being mindful and making the plan to engage a worthwhile life, a flourishing life, and showing up as someone that is worthy of that.
Well, and you talk about what is a rich life. It's not necessarily dollars in the bank. It's time with family, being able to have the freedom to do what you want. Add to your community. All of those things add to a rich life. And I will tell you, to go back, when I was struggling with, every day I was constantly, and I wasn't present. Here's what I found when I finally, and we've had this conversation a number of times. Finally, I got to the point where I'm like, my wife is really going to lose patience with this and me. Forcing myself on the weekend to not work. Once the family, I still get up at like 4 a.m. and I'm going to work till 7:30. When they get up, I have to tell you, I started to feel better. All right, the break. I began to have other ideas, things that I had been so hung up on and stuck on. Sunday and Monday, I'm like, I got to look at. You have to sometimes step back and take the break. One, it's good for you. It's good for the people around you. But also reflecting too on how you're showing up, because I never really thought about it. I was a serious guy, and my wife was like, "No, you're actually." You're
honesty.
No. She didn't quite put it that way, but the point is, she said, "You're sitting there. I don't know if you're sulking. You're clearly not interested." And that everyone sees that, and everyone feels that, and your children feel that. And, you're not showing up as your best self.
It's funny. I was working for a company, and we were doing leadership development training. And one of the exercises in one of the courses was titled, "What do they see when they see me coming?" And oftentimes the idea is that how we think people see us, how we are presenting ourselves, expressing our best selves, might not be how others interpret that. Hence your wife's comment, right? Yep. And so it's, getting all that out on paper or however you're going to note it, and then getting the feedback of others, right? Honest, truthful feedback.
And being willing to hear it.
And you got to hear it. It's not going to make you feel good, but then realizing that it's really what's required to show up and to express your best self.
Yeah, it requires leadership. And when you're not in a leadership position, you should be a student. And when you're a student, you write stuff down. The reflective process, I take it from the story of Medusa, right? She was, she's the symbol of being stuck, being in a despairing mindset. And Perseus threw his shield, and the act of reflection was able to cut her head off. The story continues, though. As her body was laying on the ground, out of her blood flew Pegasus, the sign of creativity, and Chrysor, the warrior, wielding the golden sword of discretion. So when you reflect, what went well today? That's your gratitude. What is it? What will I do differently next time? It's an actionable way to reflect. And then, how can I show up for my wife better? How can I show up for my children better? How can I show up for my employees and my business better? Okay. Now, take that and move forward. That reflective process that helps with discretion in your decisions. And if you want to release that creative energy, that's how you do it. It's an internal process. The world, with all its distraction and its lack of a plan for your life, is not going to do. It's not, hope is not a strategy. Honor is. Honor your body with nutrition and movement. Honor your family with time and intention. Honor your work with elegant self-expression. Honor the divine by engaging your talent in virtuous activity with the wider community. Honor your wealth and your treasure with finding the good life. Honor over hope will work.
You had mentioned in one of our conversations, and I loved the conversation we were having it over coffee, talking about who are you, right? Right. And I said my word, right? And then you mentioned you have a passion, you're an educator, right? Or education, I think is how you said it exactly.
Me or you?
You.
Oh,
and how
I educate and inspire, yes.
Right. And how you were able to express that in your time in the military or cultivate it to some extent, right?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yep. And then obviously as an educator, right, here in Connecticut, and now in the financial services world as a financial advisor, right? And it's because you found out sort of what your passion is, right? Who you are. You're able to transition from area to area, discipline to discipline.
Yeah.
Without losing yourself and still remaining passionate.
Yeah. It's a function of identity. Who you are is a very, I am, right? I am, and what's the descriptor? I am an educator. I educate and inspire. That's what I do. And how I sublimate that was in the Marine Corps, as a school teacher, as an advisor. It doesn't. I can choose how to sublimate that, but
it's the same thing. You're educating. It's just a different. You're just in a different setting.
So it's beyond that. So where is your identity? What do you identify with? What is that calling? You find it, and you define it. Right? It's Socrates, define your terms. Stoic, don't do a thing without a purpose. What's the purpose? That's the answer. That's what I do. And you're unapologetic about that because you put the work in to find that inner work. And You embrace it, and that's how you go out into the world. And it's very soul satisfying. But finding, what are you about and what do you do? What is it that you do? So I'll ask, and I think that's what we're having a question about. What is it? What is it that you do? Most people will answer that with a noun. Well, what do I do? I'm an accountant or an attorney or a teacher. I said, what do you do? It's like, you get one verb. What's the verb? I educate. You influence, right? You lead. That's what you do. Now, what does that mean? And do the work to figure that out. You have a couple decades, so get to work.
You've got some time.
You have some time. You got all the time you need.
So we've hit the G in game plan, which is games have rules, and all that flowed from that, which was wonderful.
It's your way of life.
It's your way of life. We then touched upon the A, which attitude, and attitude is everything.
It's your way of thinking.
It's your way of thinking. We've hit the M, which was one of my favorites. We're going to actually start doing it now. We're going to make the climb, right? And now we have finalized or touched upon the E, right, which is expressing your best self, right?
How do you show up? What is it? And it's built on success. It's built on your successes. What are you proud of? And what are the habits, realizations, attitudes, and skills that you developed in order to accomplish that thing? Now, intentionally become better at that.
Love it.
Yep.
And so for our next episode, we will
tackle the P.
We'll tackle the planning P, the P, right?
Yeah. That's purpose.
And purpose. So it's been a wonderful conversation as it always is.
Yes.
And we very much appreciate your time. You're taking the time out. Game Plan is a wonderful success model. We appreciate you sharing it with us. We've talked many times about the application of Game Plan. I can see it across many areas.
Yep.
And we look forward to expressing that or exploring that in the future. Right. And again, thank you all for showing up for the Success Tax Podcast. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Success Tax Podcast. For more valuable insights on the entrepreneurial journey, be sure to visit thesuccesstaxpodcast.com. We'll see you next time for another dose of entrepreneurial wisdom.